Ukrainian armed forces confirmed the liberation of the village Yampol near Liman. That is a huge thing because right now as we speak, Russian forces in Liman are surrounded, they're trapped. According to this tweet, the Ukrainian army surrounded about 5,500 Russian troops around Liman. These Russian troops include the same unit that took part in the First Chechen War and was almost annihilated in 1995 in Grozny. I've heard different reports from the Russian side and from the Ukrainian side. There are about 1,000 to 2,000 Russian troops surrounded. Some of them are pulling out right now as we speak, some of them are left behind. 5,500 is too optimistic, I think. Don't worry, my friends, we'll jump to the military map in no time. The commander of the Russian unit in Drobisheve said that they had to retreat from the settlement because they were about to be surrounded by the Ukrainians and the whole retreat was under heavy Ukrainian fire. Drobisheve is near Liman. Drobisheve and Liman are in the same encirclement. Supposedly, this photo shows us Russians leaving Liman. Supposedly, Ukrainians let some of them leave and some of them were left behind. Let's jump to the military map. So this map hasn't updated, but from mainly Russian sources now, because Ukrainians are really quiet. We know that Drobishne, this settlement here, has been liberated by the Ukrainians, and the Russian units in this settlement have retreated to Liman, into this settlement here. Ukrainian armed forces confirmed that they took this settlement here. Supposedly, Ukrainians have connected from here like that, cutting the only road leaving Liman through Sarichne, this settlement here, and Torske, this settlement here. This is the only way out for the Russians like that. The only way. And Ukrainians have cut it. My estimate is that there's about 1,000 to 2,000 troops trapped in this pocket, but we don't know how many left and how many were left behind. Could be that all of them left, could be that all of them are still in Liman. Time will tell. But this is great news and great success for the Ukrainians. This is a huge blow for the Russian morale in the rest of this area, because they just lost a huge amount of men and they just lost a huge amount of morale. Ukrainians are slowly and steadily pushing like that. And also like that. So another encirclement could happen here like that after Liman is taken. Ukrainians are advancing very methodically and slowly, but it works. My friends, today we actually have a sponsor. I'm not an Estonian soldier anymore, or an Estonian YouTuber. I am now a Lord of Scotland, and these are my lands. Established Titles is a project based on a historic Scottish custom, where landowners, such as myself, are referred to as lairds, or lords and ladies in English. They allow people to buy as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest, so that you can call yourself a lord or a lady. Bow before me, peasant. Off with your head. I'm supposed to be a nice lord. Off with your head. Your certificate features a unique plot number with which you can see the exact location of your land. It makes a great last-minute gift. They even have couple packs that come with adjoining plots of land. You could officially change your name to Lord or Lady and get it on your credit card, plane tickets, etc. if your country allows it. You can even get it on your dating profiles. I mean, have you seen some lords up in Tinder? You're gonna be the first. Established Titles is committed to planting a tree with every order. It is a fun, novel way to help preserve the picturesque woodlands and biodiversity of Scotland while supporting global afforestation efforts. Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now. Plus, if you use the code Estonian69, yeah, I'm not kidding you, the code is Estonian69, you get an additional 10% off. Established Titles told me that the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot within a few minutes of walking. Depending on how many of you want to become a lord or a lady, we can build our own little kingdom. Go to establishedtitles.com/Estonian69 to get your gifts now and help support the channel. In this video we can see Ukrainian unit fighting near Izium. Yes, this is a few weeks ago when they took Izium. Note how the guy who is filming shoots single shot and then turns the camera around to film himself. He seems quite composed, he doesn't seem to panic at all, seems like he knows what he's doing. And the single shot part is that there is absolutely no need to use full auto with Kalashnikovs. His comrades he's filming at, they also seem very composed. They're not really hiding, they're in plain sight. They're not afraid, they're not panicking. Brave troops. The entire unit seems quite fearless. They're just advancing into the Russian positions, guns blazing, and then they take 15 Russian POWs, including 2 majors. This beautiful footage shows us Ukrainian Su-24s providing close air support. They release their payload and immediately deploy flares and fly away. Supposedly the payload hit the target, and the entire thing is just beautiful to watch. It happened near Davydiv Brid, Kherson Oblast. Let's look at this incredible footage of Ukrainian attack helicopter on a mission. Note how the chopper flies very close to the ground, but when it's time to shoot the missiles, it ascends a little bit higher, points the nose to the sky, fires the missiles and then descends close to the ground again, not to get detected. These missiles are dumb missiles. If you point them towards the sky like that, they fly further. They're very imprecise. Ukraine has them in their stockpile, so they use them. Russians use the same type of missiles the same way. Usually these missiles don't hit the targets, but you don't need to have an effect on the enemy soldiers. I gotta point out, I do like these small fans blowing wind to the Ukrainian pilots. Ukraine will allow Russian POWs to call home in every few days for up to quarter of an hour, 15 minutes, to keep their mental health normal. This is very important because Ukraine has thousands, if not tens of thousands of Russian POWs. It is not easy to guard these people. If they have a problem, you have a problem. So Ukraine's best interest is to keep these troops reasonably happy and not too happy. Ukraine needs these POWs and every future ones they can get because Russia has a lot, millions of Ukrainians actually. Ukraine wants these people back. They need POWs to trade. A nuclear strike on Ukraine will be seen as a nuclear strike against NATO. These are the words of US Senator Lindsey Graham. Polish minister says, if Russia uses nukes in Ukraine, NATO will respond in conventional methods. For example, attacking Russian cities with NATO aircraft. It is weird to threaten a country with conventional means if the country uses nuclear weapons. But the threat is true because if NATO would use NATO tanks and planes, Russia couldn't do anything about it. Their anti-air capabilities are very poor now, and their army in Russia mostly consists of freshly mobilized reservists. So they are completely helpless if NATO would do anything. Putin gathered a huge meeting in Moscow to ceremoniously announce the annexation of Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donbass and Luhansk areas into the Russian Federation. The whole thing was incredibly bizarre. He made a speech. I quote, "The West wants to see us as their colony. They want to rob us. They are using double standards, triple standards. They're taking us for fools." And like in the Soviet Union, periodically after every 1 minute, everybody claps and Putin pauses. Then everybody just stops clapping and Putin continues his speech. And after another minute, everybody claps again. And they do it with dead zombie faces. Putin has truly pushed Russia back into the Soviet times. People clapped like that to Stalin's speeches, which were really bad. But everybody clapped out of fear. You can see the same dead inside look in these people's eyes when they clap. It is incredibly bizarre to me. There were attacks against Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. Biggest pipelines that pumped gas straight from Russia to Germany. Russia turned off the gas a few weeks ago, so I don't understand why should they attack these pipelines. Some people think Russia attacked these pipelines, some people think USA attacked these pipelines. I'll let you decide. The fact is there are 4 leaks now, that makes 4 attacks. Different areas around the attacks registered huge explosions, so something very powerful was used. On 29th of September, the Finnish government finally decided to close their borders to Russian tourists. Norway is considering doing the same, so Russia's western border from Norway all the way to southern Ukraine is closed. Yes, Russians can go to Belarus, but where do they go from there? Now Russians can only go to Georgia, Kazakhstan and Turkey. But I think it's a matter of time if these countries close their borders. No country bordering Russia wants tens of thousands of Russian men. This is a serious security threat. The authorities in Tuva, Siberia, promised to give families 1 ram for each mobilized man they send. Sometimes flour and potatoes are given also with the rams. And believe me or not, this actually works. For Russians, this works. They are very willing to send their sons to get some livestock. This is the head of Dagestan, Sergei Melikov. Huge protests started in Dagestan against this mobilization, culminating with Sergei, the head of Dagestan, saying that mobilization is cancelled in Dagestan. This goes directly against Moscow's orders, directly against Putin's orders. Dagestan and Chechnya are the only parts of Russia that give a huge you to Putin and saying they won't mobilize. And since Putin has his hands full because all over the country there are huge problems, he cannot do anything about it. He doesn't have the strength to force it. In this video, Sergei Melikov is very angry at Russian enlistment officers who, in one of Dagestan cities, Derbent is the city called, rode around with a car, blasting full out of loudspeakers, forcing men to come to enlistment offices. Dagestani people and Dagestani leaders seem not to be afraid of Russia, not to be afraid of the Moscow central power. Interesting things can come out of that small state. Since Russia is in deficit of everything connected to the mobilization, we're talking about boots, shirts, Kalashnikovs, you name it, they're in deficit of everything. They're sending mobiles to Belarus to be trained, 20,000 at the time. Russia also lacks officers to train these troops, so Belarusian officers can do it. What happened to Russian officers? Well, they're mostly dead in Ukraine. You're gonna love this humor, imagine this. Police come to your door to mobilize you. 1 day of training later, you're sent to Ukraine. Days later, your legs are blown off. 3 days later, you're laying in a hospital. 3 days later, this is your reward. Drumroll, a visit from Steven Seagal. Yep, this happened. This clown, I can't. It was all worth it in the end. In this video, supposedly a fresh Russian recruit punches a colonel in the face. And he seems to be dominating the fight. This was supposedly after the colonel called the recruits cannon fodder. Can you imagine this in America? A private punching a colonel in the face. Imagine this if you're in the Marines, if you're in the army. Imagine, can you do this and what would be the consequences? Well, in Russia, the discipline is so non-existent, this can happen and it will happen. I mean, look how they are crammed together in this room. It reminds me of Squid Game, the way they slept on like towers of beds. It reminds me of that. Russian mobilization has been a huge failure. It has turned out now that Russia does not have a digitalized list of people, where they work, their age, how many children they have. This is in the Western countries. It's all digitalized. Put in criteria of list of names you want to be given so they won't have children, they are not working in the military facility. Russia does not have any of this. They just have a good old population registry. Turns out the mobilization list of names were taken out of that. Nobody checked how old the person is, if they have any deadly diseases or if they have children. Now we know that the workers from Russian military companies were mobilized, so they lost workers. Fathers of children, for example, 3 children, 4 children, they were mobilized. And old people up to 70 years old were mobilized. Putin himself actually admitted this in his speech, that mistakes were made. If you want to make mobilization based on some criteria, you need to have a digitalized registry of people in your country and what they do, where they work, how old they are. Russia does not have any of that. They live in the 90s still. And now we know this, and it is bizarre and funny. And this is why Russians burn their mobilization offices, because these lists exist on paper only. If you burn these lists, you cannot be mobilized because they rely on this physical paper. So Russians burn more. My friends, thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me. If you like what I do, Patreon link is in the description, as well as Knock 'em Out Cold merch. And as always, until my next video, Slava Ukraini!